Thank you for joining me this afternoon for this first in our series of How I Did It. I'm really excited to have so many of you here today. I recognize a lot of names of people that I've photographed with or traveled with, and thanks you guys for being here and supporting me today. And just as many names on the list of new people, so welcome. Thanks for being here. Um, those who know me know that I really enjoy working with the iPhone. I shoot with a big camera too, but the iPhone is really my first love, I think, and I enjoy the freedom of it and all of that. So um, I'm not going to take a lot of time to talk about myself. If you want to know more about me, you can go out to my website and take a look at that. I may show you a few things at the end of the hour about some of the workshops that I'm doing and the other kinds of training that I have available in the event you might be interested. But we have a lot to cover in the hour that we have, and I'm noticing people are still logging in, so that's okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take us into an app, and it's an app that I didn't even mention to you because we're not going to really go into depth with it, but it's a camera app. It's called Vivid HDR. It's this one right here. And the first image that we're going to work with is a photograph that I took in the Great Smoky Mountains in November. I did a workshop there. John Barclay and I partnered to lead a workshop in the fall, and I used Vivid HDR to capture this image. And I'm not going to go into great detail about this app, but if you want the settings for it, send me an email and I will share a web page that has the settings that I recommend for this app. I think it's the best HDR app that there is out there. And for those of you who haven't done HDR, it's just a fancy way of saying it gives you a really good exposure. So we've all done that thing where you take a picture and there's someone standing in front of a window and they're a silhouette because the brightness of the window has overshadowed them. Or the other way around, you see the person but the outside window is all white. Well, with HDR photography, you get the best of both of those exposures in one image. And this particular software allows you to take 3 to 5 pictures at a time, and then it combines them automatically into a really good exposure. So what I'll do, if you want, I'll send you these settings. Again, we could do a whole webinar just on this app, but send me a note if you want them, and I will send you the settings. What I did want to talk about today, this app, it's really got a lot of cool features. One of the things that's a little different about it is that it has its own gallery within the app. So not only does it save a picture to your camera roll, but it also stores them in a gallery. And that's where I'm going to go right now to go get our picture. So to access the gallery, I'm going to slide from left to right with my finger on the screen, and it brings up the gallery. And this is just one of the pictures in the gallery. But if I go up to this grid up here at the top and tap on the grid, suddenly I'm seeing all of the images that I've taken over the past several weeks and months, and you can see they're organized by date. And I'm going to go down to October, which is when I was in the Smokies. It's right here, October 22nd, and this is the photograph that I want us to work on first. So I'm going to tap on that icon, and it brings me out into this area of Vivid HDR. Now, one of the cool things about this app is that if I were to go down here now where this palette is, and I tap on the palette, it tells me that this photograph, when I took it, I had the settings on lively. But if I tap on that button right there, it brings up all of the other settings that are available in this app. Even though I've already taken this photograph, I can choose now any one of these other presets to change my image to. So for example, if I wanted it to be black and white, I could tap gray art, and suddenly I have a really nice black and white image. I'm going to go back and tap gray art again to bring these up. For today, for our purposes, I'm going to save this in the natural mode, because what we're going to do with this image, I think the best color and everything is going to benefit us if we go that route. So I've selected natural. Now I'm going to go up to my check mark here and tap that, and it's asking me if I want to save this image to my camera roll, and I do. So I'm going to say OK. So now let's go out and take a look at the camera roll, and there's our image. I'll turn it sideways so we can see it better. So there's our image right out of Vivid HDR. So I'm going to turn it back this way because the first thing I want to do with almost all of my images, my workflow involves taking them into an app called SnapSeed. And I'm not going to go into great detail about all the ins and outs of SnapSeed today, but I have a couple different webinars out on my YouTube channel that are there for you to look at if you want. Some of you, I think, were part of the webinars that we did when I recorded those. And in those webinars, I'll take you into a little bit more detail on how SnapSeed works and what some of the features of it are that are pretty cool. So what I'm going to do right now is go down to the share icon and tap on that. And one of the options I have is to copy the image. So I'm going to tap copy. And now I'm going to hit the home button, then swipe down in the middle of the screen. And I want to go to SnapSeed. Well, it's not in my toolbar right now, but if I type in the search cell SN, there's SnapSeed. So I don't spend a lot of time swiping through screens of icons looking for an app. I just use the search feature to find things. So I'm going to tap on SnapSeed, and it brings up the image that I was working on last. But I want to open a new image, the one we just selected. So I'm going to tap on Open and go down. And I have several options. I could go out to the camera roll and get an image. I could take a picture with SnapSeed. I could open the last image saved, or I could paste the image we copied. And that's the choice I'm going to take. So I'm going to paste the image. And so there's our image in SnapSeed. Now I'm going to turn it sideways so we can see it better. And I want to just talk about this for a second. One of the things that you might notice is that we've got some blurring around the edges of this image. I think that's because when I took this shot, I was using an attachable lens, and I may not have had it on exactly precisely aligned. And when that happens, sometimes you get a little bit of this vignetting. Now, under some circumstances, I might just throw this picture, just throw this picture away and not use it. But because of what I'm going to do with it, I don't really care about that blurry vignette, so it doesn't bother me so much. So before I start doing any editing in SnapSeed, the first thing I do is take a look at the image, and I go around the edges of it, and I'm looking to see if there's anything in the edge of the image that I need to take out or crop out or do anything with. So for example, one of the things we know about viewing an image is that our eye goes to the sharpest and brightest parts of the image. So if there was, say, a white flag or something over here right on the edge of the image, it's probably not the best location for that item to be because it's going to pull our eye out of the main part of the scene and the subject over here to this white spot. So the first thing I do is kind of go around and look, do I have any things like that that I need to take care of? Or maybe there's a telephone wire running through my scene, and do I need to remove that? So in this case, I don't have any of that, but I do start with that kind of initial look around the borders and make sure everything's okay before I go on. Once I've determined that, I go to the pencil, and I'll tap on the pencil, and I'm going to start with Tune Image. So I'm going to tap on the Tune Image icon, and you notice it comes up immediately with brightness at 0. So I'm going to take my finger and put it on the screen. And again, all of this is covered in great detail in one of the other webinars I do on SnapSeed alone. But I take my finger and put it on the screen, and look, these are all the different parameters that I can adjust just by stopping on them when they're blue in SnapSeed. So I want to start with ambiance. And I'm going to take my finger, and to increase these numbers, I just slide my finger to the right. And notice how it's going up. I'm going to take it all the way up to 100. Now, before I do anything, I want to look at, kind of compare the before and after. So to do that, I simply press my finger on the screen. So there's before, and there's after. So you can see that ambiance adjustment has brought out our color, it's brought out some of the detail. It's really made the image just really pop. Let's do that again. There's before and there's after. Now, in some instances, 100 is going to be too much, and I'll often just kind of move back and forth here, watching the image, and look for what I refer to as the sweet spot, where you have your colors and everything looking pretty good. I may back this down maybe to about 80 in this case, and this is sort of where you get the chance to apply your own creative judgment. It's kind of like, you know, seasoning your soup. You're going to want maybe a little less salt than I do, and so it's really where you get to influence the outcome. So the next thing I'm going to do after adjusting ambiance is take my finger and slide it down to highlights. Now, before I make any adjustments, I just want to talk about highlights and shadows for a second. Those are the two settings there. Highlights and shadows are they're like a brightness setting, but just for highlights or just for shadows. So for example, if we go up to the top, there is a brightness setting. And if I slide my finger across, I can brighten the whole image. But it's brightening everything, the bright spots and the shadows. I rarely use the brightness slider because when I want to brighten, I want to be selective about it. So if I go, let me set this back to 0 here. Come on. Close enough. Okay. So, but when I want to make adjustments like that, I go down to highlights and shadows, and I can adjust just the shadows or just the highlights. So right now we're in highlights. Now if I take my finger and slide it to the right, I can increase the highlights, and notice how the sky is getting kind of white or lighter, and the road as well. But what I typically like to do, instead of increasing those highlights, I like to bring it into the negative. So watch what happens as I decrease the highlights. Look at the sky and look at the road. So here's before and here's after. So, excuse me, so by dropping those highlights, and this, by the way, works remarkably well when you have sky with clouds in it, it'll just really make the clouds pop. So once I have that, again, sometimes I move back and forth looking for that sweet spot, but that looks pretty good to me right there. Then I'm going to go down to shadows. And again, this is like a brightness slider just for the shadows. So we've got these beautiful shadows running across the road. We've got a shadow kind of along the edge here. So it's really got some you know, nice shadows in the image. If I wanted to, I could increase the shadows by going to the right, and I'm brightening the shadows. But I don't want to do that. I want to add a little drama to this image, so I'm going to take my shadows into the negative. Now, if you go too far, you'll start losing detail in the good parts of the image that you want. But if you go maybe, I don't know, in this case about 50%, we've darkened the shadows across here and really added an element of drama to the image, and I think that's pretty cool. So the next thing I'm going to do is slide down to the last item on the list. This is warmth. If you go to the left with this, you cool the image, adding blue or whatever. If you go to the right, it adds yellow and warms it up. This image is already pretty warm, but I might bump it up to maybe 4 or 5, just to give it a little bit of a warmer feel. So now we're ready to commit to those changes. I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark here, and we've still not saved this image, but what we just did was commit to the changes that we made in the Tune Image palette. So we're going to stay in SnapSeed, and we're going to go and do some more things. So I'm going to go back down here to the pencil, and this time I'm going to go up to Details, and I'll tap on Details. Well, I'll tap on Details, there we go. And in Details, if I put my finger on the screen, I have two parameters I can adjust: structure and sharpening. And one of the things I like to do when I'm sharpening is to take my fingers and expand the image so I can watch a little bit closer what's happening, and as I sharpen and adjust the structure. But one of the things that I have learned is that if I go beyond about 20 or 21 in the numbers here, I'm starting to get into territory where the image begins to degrade and not look so good. So I'm going to just ramp these up. I'm watching, but I'm going to ramp them up to about 20 or 21, and both of them. And I'm not going to go much further. Now, I encourage you to look at every image just to see, because they're all going to be different. But if you start getting up there above 20 or 21, you want to look really carefully to make sure that you're not getting a crispy image there. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark again over here and commit to those changes in the details toolkit. And now I'm going to go down one more time to the pencil. And this time, I'm going to go to one of the filters down here, and it's called Total Contrast. It's one of my favorite little tweaks. I'm going to go ahead and tap on it. One of the things I want to point out with this is if you look at the value here, we've just opened it up. We haven't changed any values, but it comes in defaulting at plus 30 on high tones. If I take my finger on the screen, you'll notice that it's defaulting plus 30, 50 on midtones, and 30 on low tones. So before you've ever done any changes to this at all, it's already coming in with the change from what it was before. So before I do any adjustments, I press my finger on the screen and watch what's happening. So I'm going to do that right now. So there's before. Come on, there's before. And there's after. So before and after. It's very subtle, but I want you to watch over here. Do you see these grasses on the right just above the fence? Here's before, and here's after. Look at the difference in the detail there and the structure. You've got just a little bit more contrast. It really makes the image pop, and it's doing that across the entire image, but you can really see it here. So in this case, I'm going to keep these total contrast settings. I'm not going to change them. I'm just going to keep them just as they are right out of the box, and I'm going to go over and click the check mark. Okay, so now we're ready to save our image. Now I'm going to go up here. Do you see this little icon? Looks like a couple of layers stacked on top of each other. I'm going to tap on that, and it allows us to go view the edits that we've made. So when we come over here, you can see we've got these 4 stacks, if you will, or layers. We started out with the original image, then we went into Tune Image where we adjusted the ambiance and the shadows and the highlights. Then we went into Details where we sharpened and adjusted the structure. And then finally we did Tonal Contrast. So I'm going to click this arrow over here on the left and go back to the home screen. And I wanted to show you that. And again, I go into more detail about what you can do within those layers. You can do some masking, you can do some other things, and the detail for that is in one of the more specific SnapSeed tutorials that I have online. So now we're ready to save this. So I'm going to go up and tap the Save icon, and when I do, I have 3 options, and the option I always use is Save a Copy. And what this is ensuring is that your original image is fine. It's not changed at all, and now you've saved an image that has these changes to it. So if you open this image back up in SnapSeed, it will have all these stacks that you've created, and you can continue to edit from where you left off. So let's go out to the camera roll and take a look at that image. So there's our image that we just processed out of SnapSeed. And it's starting to look pretty good. Now, you could stop here. That's a perfectly fine image, and you could just be done and not do any more to it. But what I want to do is take it one step further and add some tonality to it and kind of give it a, I don't know, an old-timey feel. So for that, I'm going to use an app called Old Photo Pro. I'm going to turn my camera vertically again, and again, I'm going to hit the home button, and then I'm going to swipe down in the center of the screen, and up here in the search cell, I'm going to type Old. And before I go any farther, it pops right up in my screen. There's Old Photo Pro. That's what the app looks like, and that's what we're going to use next to process this image further. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on Old Photo Pro. And this is an app that's been around a while, so it's kind of primitive in some respects, but I just love the effect that it gives. So First thing I'm going to do is go get my photograph, load the photo, go to my camera roll, and I'm going to select this image right here in the end. And it begins and starts doing its thing right away, and it's already starting the process. So there we go. It's processed the image, and it's given it a sepia tone look. It's also, noticed the jagged edge around the image, and then it's got some scratches in here and things like that. So that's all good and well, but I like to do some different things. So I'm going to go back into the Edit button here, tap on Edit, and it brings us into this this screen with sliders, and we've got this little thumbnail up here to see. I wish it was bigger so we could see better, but again, it's an older app. We can adjust brightness, contrast, and tone if we want, but I rarely do because those adjustments I've already done in SnapSeed, and I don't really feel the need to do much more here. What I really like to work with is the color intensity, and I'll come back to that in just a second. The first thing I usually do, and this is not a judgment about edges, but sometimes I don't like to have them. So the first thing I do is come down and I tap on Papers and Edges, and you notice now I can either choose a rounded edge, a ragged edge, which is what we have, or I can choose no edges. So I'm going to tap no edges, and I can eliminate. I've just eliminated the edges. Now if I go up here, there are 6 different buttons that have different textures and scratches on them, and one has none. Well, I'm going to tap on none because I don't want any scratches in my image. Now you might, and that's fine, but I'm going to turn them off. So the final thing that we can do here on this particular screen, you see where it says Disable Halo. What they're calling a halo is really a vignette. It's a vignette that goes around the edge of the image here. So if I tap on that to dislabel it, just watch the image when I tap. See how it lightened at the edges? So it's really an on-off switch for a vignette. So there's on and there's off. In this case, I'm going to leave it on. I like it. And because we've got those blurry edges, this is going to help sort of integrate that blurry edge into our final image in a positive way rather than being a detracting thing. So now I'm going to say back, hit the back button, and the back button takes me back to these sliders. Now I mentioned before that the one I really like to work with is color intensity. So if I take this color intensity button and slide it all the way to the right, look what happens to my color. It's bringing in lots of the color, but it's still a little muted and a little soft. It's still got a sepia tone glow to it. If I come down and slide that back a little bit, I can mute the color even further. I really like this look. When I was in college, we used to take black and white prints and then use a paintbrush and something called Marshall oil paints, and we would hand tint black and white images, and they often ended up looking very much like this with almost a pastel kind of soft color to them, and I really liked it. The other thing you have, now we've chosen the sepia filter here, so we've got the browner look, but there's also the cyanotype filter on the right, and if I tap that, it turns things blue. For some images, that blue tone is terrific, but for this one, we're going to stay with our sepia filter. I think that's the better look. And that's the color right there looks pretty good to me. I think that's probably about where I want it, but again, you're going to slide back and forth on this slider looking for kind of the sweet spot that satisfies you. So come down and say OK, and there's our image, and I think that's pretty good. I like the color. I can see it better in this view, and I like what I've got. Sometimes I go back into editing after looking at the bigger image here and make a few changes, but I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and save it. So I click the Save button, and you notice it's asking you about output resolution. Some apps today still have this question posed at the end when you go to save. Whenever you can, always choose the higher of the two or choose maximum or whatever. One thing about this app, I'm going to go ahead and tap high, and while it's doing its thing, this app, even though we saved it as high, it's still a lower image or a lower resolution than many other images today with newer apps. And that's not a big deal, but it can be a problem if you want to print this image large. And so, and by large I mean anything bigger than 16 by 20. So the next step we're going to take, there's a way to not only help us manage this color even more, but also a way to ensure that when we save the image, we're getting a higher resolution. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Home button, just to show you what I'm talking about. Now, you might want to jot this down because I'm about to show you another app that I didn't mention before. It's called View EXIF. And I'm going to tap on my photos icon here. I'm going to go get this image that we just did in Old Photo Pro, and I'm going to tap on it. And down below, I'm going to hit the share icon again. And when I do, there's this utility app in here called View EXIF. And I encourage you to get it and install it and use it to help you know some data about your image. All it does is show you metadata about this image. So when I tap on View EXIF, it shows me the photograph, it shows me the size of the image. So this is a really unique way of knowing whether your app has down-resed your image or not. So we know now that this is a 1.19 megabyte file. So let's look at the other one just to get a comparison. So I'm going to say done here, and now I'm going to go back to, this is the SnapSeed image that we saved before, and I'm going to look at View EXIF on it, and look, it's a 4.76 megabyte file. So obviously, Old Photo Pro has down-resed our image by about 75% or somewhere around there. So, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. But there's one other thing I want to show you about this View EXIF app. It is really a cool feature. You see the red dot on the map? Well, because I had geotagging turned on in my camera settings, my Vivid HDR camera settings, watch what happens. When I tap on the red dot, it asks me if I want to open this in my map program. I tap on that, and it takes me to my navigation tool, and it will give me directions directly to that image in Sparks Lane. Notice it's 6 hours and 12 minutes away from where I am right now, but I really like this feature because I shoot a lot of things out in the country, barns, things like that, and this is a great tool for getting me back to where I shot the original image. So anyway, I wanted to show that to you. So the next step in this process is to go into Image Blender. And I'm going to go up here to my search cell, and I'm going to type in BL. Before I can go any further, Image Blender pops up, and this is the icon for it, red icon with white layers. So I'm going to tap on that. Now, it's automatically taking me into the image I was working on a minute ago. So I have to clear it out first. So I'm going to tap on the left picture down here and say remove it. And I'm going to go over here and tap on the right picture and say remove that. And now I'm going to tap over here on this square in the left, go to my library, and I'm going to go to my camera roll. And I want to make sure that I choose this high resolution image that came out of SnapSeed. It's this one right here. So I'm going to tap on it, and I put this high res image, the one that was what, 4 point some megabytes, I put that one over here. On this side, I'm going to go get this picture, go to the library, and this time I'm going to get this one, which is the Old Photo Pro image that we know is smaller, and I'm going to put it on the right. Okay, now here's a weird thing. Do you see how if I slide the slider all the way to the right, it shows me the picture on the right. But notice it's way down here. Well, remember the signature that was on here in the last image? I had used this app to put my signature on the page, and I had shrunk the signature down to this size. Well, it's brought this new image in, shrunken down to that same size. So to fix that, we're going to go over and tap on the image, and we're going to say reset. I'm going to tap on reset, and it asks me, what do you want to reset? Well, I want to reset that arrangement. I want to get back to normal. So I say arrange, and now it's popped that image back up to the big size. So now if we take the slider on the bottom, we can move back, we can move back and forth between the full SnapSeed image and the full Old Photo Pro image. So what we're looking for again is that sweet spot in here that brings us up a little bit. What I'm watching as I slide this, I'm looking at my corners where that vignette is, and I want something maybe about right there. So SnapSeed is another tool that we could do a whole workshop on. It's a fascinating tool. You can mask with it. You can do lots of other things. I will show you another thing that we can do with it. But while we're in here, I just want to show you, if I take my finger and swipe up from the bottom, across the bottom here we have a couple dozen different blend modes. These are different modes. They're standard in lots of other apps like Photoshop, and you even see them in the apps for the iPhone. And they define how these two images are going to get blended together. And based on that definition, the looks can be very different. So you may want to page through the different blending options to see if anything, really comes close to what your vision is for this image. In this case, I'm going to stick with normal because it's giving me the closest to what I want. But it's a really powerful component here of this app that I encourage you to explore or watch for future webinars, and we'll go into it together. So now we've got our two images blended. We've chosen this kind of spot right here. We've got the sepia tone look from Old Photo Pro, and we're going to save this image now by going up here to the save icon. So I tap on that, and I'm going to go down and click on save, and we've just saved our image to the camera roll. So now let's go out and look at that image again, and just to see what the size of it is. So before, the image that came out of Old Photo Pro was like 1.9 or something like that megabytes. So this image, excuse me for shifting back and forth, let's go down to the share icon and click on View EXIF again. And look, we now have an image that is 2.56 megabytes. So it basically doubled the size of the one that came out of SnapSeed. So now we're getting up into a size that will allow us to print probably 16 by 20 without loss of integrity in the image. So it's just a nice trick to be able to do that, to up-res an image that you might have by blending it with an image that's of a higher value. Okay, so now one last thing I want to do. I'm going to go back to Blender. I have a watermark, a signature that I put on all my images for posting on Instagram or Facebook. I had it created by a company called Photo Logo, and I can share that information with you if you'd like. And what I like to do is use Image Blender to add that signature to my page. So what I'm going to do, we've already saved this image in our camera roll, and we could just go out and get it, but we don't have to do that. I'll show you why. If we come up here to the save icon, and I tap on that, and I go down here to this tray of icons down here and slide to the right. Now yours might be in a different location because you can pick these up, press on them, and move them around. I don't know if you knew that, but you can. So what you're looking for is the flatten icon. And I'm going to tap on flatten and watch what's happening. It's taking that image and putting it all over here on the left in a flattened form. It's exactly the same image that we just saved to the camera roll, but we didn't have to go back out and get it. It just flattened us for us and put us over here. So now we have this space open to go get another image. In this case, I'm going to go get my signature file. So I'm going to tap on this icon, go to my library, and in this case, I have a folder where I put my signatures. So down here it says signatures. So I'm going to tap on that album, and you notice there's a black signature, but right here you can't see it, but there's a white signature. You can't see it because it's white on white, but that's the one I want. I want the white. So I'm going to tap there on that invisible spot, and there's my signature popped into this image, and it's over here on the right. So how do I get it? It's in the wrong place. It's not down in the corner. What do I do? Well, if I go up here to the this cross arrows icon here, I can tap on that, and now you notice I'm in an arrange mode. I can take my two fingers and squeeze that signature together and take my finger and drag it over to the location I want it in, and when I get it there, I'm done. I can hit save. So what I've done now is save it out of the arrange mode. We still have to save it from here back to our camera roll. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the save icon in the top and hit the save icon down here. And now let's go out and look at our camera roll. And there's our image with the signature added, and it's all great. So that's our first image. I know I'm going really fast here. I feel like drinking out of a fire hydrant, but I want to remind you, this is going to be recorded, and you will have a link to the recording within probably a day or so. It takes me a while to edit them, but you can always go back and review this at your own pace and your own time. And those will be out there, you know, indefinitely. So as a participant in this, that's, you know, you have access to those. So let's go on to our next image. I'm going to go back to my camera roll here, and I'm going to go out to a folder that I created. And where are you? Here it is, right here, how I did it. So here's the image that I want us to work with in this next part of the webinar. This is a photograph that I took of a dancer in the Cuban National Ballet. Her name is Mercedes Piedras. She is a remarkable dancer. We had the just the luck of being in Havana in November when the National Ballet performed, and we got to see Mercedes and her whole dance troupe on stage, and it was a remarkable experience. If you go out to my website, there's a blog post that I wrote about being there. We even had press passes so that we could cycle two of our participants down to the stage where they could photograph. It was great. But these were taken in an old house the following day after the performance. And this is an iPhone photograph. And I'm guessing, again, I've got this vignetting. I think I used the same long lens that I had before, and I probably still had it on not right. And I'm getting this, vignetting on the corners. So once again, what I want to do, I'm going to shift this way, tap on the save or the share icon, and I'm going to copy the image to the clipboard, tap my home button, swipe down and go back to SnapSeed. Now SnapSeed is already here in the tray, so I'm going to tap on it there. And there's the image we just worked on. So I want to open a new image, so I'll tap open in the upper left corner. And again, I'm going to choose paste image down here at the bottom. And there's our image. So again, I'm going to turn this sideways so you get a better view of it. And so the first thing, again, I want to do is look at the image and see if there's anything I need to fix or take out of it or repair. And one of the things I want to do is try and fix these vignettes. And I think I can do that using the healing brush in SnapSeed. I've also got, see these specks of dirt on the floor? I mean, it's hard to tell the difference between the dirt and the marble floor, but those are kind of bothering me, so I'm going to take those out. So before we do anything, I'm going to go to the pencil. I'm going to go to the healing brush, which is over here. And by the way, just so you know, if you have anything really complex to do with healing, like taking out a telephone wire or something like that, there is a better app for that. It's called Touch-Retouch. It is a remarkable app for removing unwanted items from your image, and it does a better job than the healing brush here in SnapSeed. But for simple things like these spots and probably these corners, this is probably going to work fine. So I'm in the healing brush now. I'm going to expand. I'm going to expand my image. Now, there's no way to make the brush smaller except by expanding the image, and as you make the image bigger, the brush becomes relatively smaller. So that's how you do that. So let's go over here. We're just going to try and touch up this corner, and I'm just going to kind of go like that and see if I can't undo some of that darkness in there without making it look like I have. So I'm just kind of brushing. So now that's okay, I guess. Let's go over here on this side and try the same thing. And there we go. That's not terrible. It's not the greatest, but I did this earlier and I had better results. So each time you're going to have a little, but you can see at least now we don't have that terrible dark spot down there. It's a little better. So I'm okay with that. So the next thing I want to do is get some of these spots out of here. And all I'm going to do is tap lightly on each of these spots. and a little red dot appears just briefly, and I don't know if you can even see it. It's happening so quick. But I'm just going through and taking things out. I noticed there's a little speck down here right by her toe, and I'm going to try and take that out, and I did. Okay, so that's it. And now that I've done that, now if you do something and you want to correct it, like let's say I come up here and I erase her foot, well, that's not going to work. But I just go down and hit the undo button, and it puts it right back. So now I'm ready to save those changes. Looks like I've got a little artifact over here. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to save these changes by clicking the check mark. So now, here we are. We're ready to do our other processing. So again, first thing I do is go into Tune Image. Tap on Tune Image. I'm going to go down to Ambiance, and I'm going to crank it up to 100. Well, when I do that, here's before, and here's after. So what I'm noticing is this area up here is getting very yellow, and a little bit more than I want. So I'm going to back this off somewhat, maybe down to about 60% or so. What I do like happening is over here with this part of the image and her feet. I really like, so there's before and there's after, and I like what's happening there. So now I'm going to drop down to highlights, and again, I'm going to drop the highlights into the negative and watch what happens to the bright spots and see how I like it. So here I go down into the negative. There's about, let's just go to about 50%. So let's look at this. There's before and there's after. Look at the, we're getting some real detail in her calf, so seeing some of the muscles, even the veins here in her leg that weren't visible before, and I like that. So now we're going to go down to shadows. Now we've got these beautiful shadows running up under here, under her feet and her legs. And if we go to the right with that, we lift those shadows. But that's not what I want to do. I want to take it into the negative and dramatize those shadows. So there we go. Look at how rich the shadows are now. So there's our before, and there's our after. Now, one last thing. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to go to the tonal contrast again. This is one I often check and sometimes discard because I don't like the effect. So look at what's happening. Remember, this is the one that comes in defaulting to 30, 50, 30 on these high, mid, and low tones. When I look at this, I don't really like what it's done. It's gotten a rougher look to it. It's given it more contrast than I want. If I press on the screen and look at before and after, before, I prefer before. So I'm going to go down here. I'm not even going to bother trying to adjust this to what I want. I'm going to delete it. So I'm going to go over here and click the X, and I have just deleted that layer. I'm not going to have tonal contrast, and that's just fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this image by tapping the save icon. Well, first let's just take a look. I'm going to tap the layers icon for a second. We'll go down and we'll look at the edits that we made. And here's our stack over here. We made the healing work that we did, and then we did tune image. Oh, but you know what we forgot to do? We forgot to do sharpening and details. So I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to go to details, and I'm going to run the structure up to about 20 and the sharpening up to about 20. And I'm going to look at that and kind of see there's before and there's after, and I like what I'm seeing. It's a very subtle shift, but it's good for me. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And so now if we look at our edits, we've got our healing, our tune image, and our details. And now we're ready to save this image. So I'm going to go up here and tap on Save, and I'm going to save a copy. So once again, let's go out to our camera roll. Oops, and come on. Sorry. And there's our camera roll, and there's our image as we've just taken it out of Snapseed. Now, once again, you could stop here. It's really a nice image. I might, as I'm looking at it here, I might go in, I see a spot up here at the top I'd probably take out, and I'm looking at this kind of blemish on the floor. I would probably take that out because it's kind of distracting me. But generally, what I'm seeing here I really like. And you could stop here. But what I want to do is take it into another, again, kind of an ethereal look to it. And to do that, I'm going to use an app called Formulas. So I'm going to type it into the cell here, F-O-R, and there it pops up before I get any further. It looks like this, a little pyramid, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And this is what it looks like when you open it. One of the things about this app, some of you might be aware of an app called Stackables, and here's a link to it right here. Stackables and Formulas are companion apps. Stackables is the, I guess I'd call it the parent app. Stackables is where it's an app that allows you to do layers, incredible textures, just very complicated and powerful app that I recommend you looking at, and we may do some work with it in a webinar in the future. But what's nice about Formulas is that the formulas that we're going to look at in this app were created in Stackables. So someone else has done the work for us and created these presets, if you will, that we can use. Now the nice thing is we can use the presets, but we can customize them so we still get a look that's unique. So I'm going to go and tap on the picture icon here, and I'm going to go to our camera roll and get our photograph of the ballet dancer. And this is what we see first. Now if you notice down here, you have the option to choose different aspect ratios. You can choose a square or these others. There's like a panorama. You can do that here. I don't usually do that at this point because any cropping I'm going to do I've probably already done in Snapseed. So by the time I get here, this is kind of where I'm headed. But you have that option to make those changes if you want. Once you're satisfied with your cropping here, or lack of it, you go ahead and hit the check mark. And when we get into the check mark here, now you can see we have, these are all the different presets or formulas, if you will, that were created in Stackables app and are now here in the Formulas app for us to use. So you notice on the left here right now, it's set to none. So we have no filter or preset applied to the image. But if we scroll along, you can spend a lot of time exploring these and you'll have a lot of fun doing it. I encourage it. I'm going to pick a couple that I've already pre-selected for this. I love this ambrosia look. It's got a very soft look. You'll see I'm going to go ahead and tap on it, and it applies that filter to this image. And I mean, that is just so cool. Now, it's too much for me, but down here it tells us that it's set at 100%. Well, if I take my finger and slide to the right, I can drop the value and make it more transparent so that more of the image comes through. So I don't know, I might want to go down even a little bit more to where it's something like that. So now I've got this beautiful edge. It's starting to look like a vintage image now. So one of the things you can do here is you can add layers. You can stack one filter on top of another. So to do that, we're going to go over to the check mark. I'm going to tap the check mark, and you get these icons. Now these down here, this is Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and you can use these if you want to post to those places directly out of here. I rarely do that. The two icons that are important to me are the save icon here on the right. So when you click this, it's going to save that image that we just created to our camera roll, but it's going to leave it the same and untouched in Formula so we can go back to it. This icon, notice it's 2 layers. Well, this allows us to add another layer. So we can add a layer on top of the layer that's already there and change the look even further. So oftentimes I will save as I go along. So I'm going to save this first by tapping the save icon, and it's saving this layer for me onto my camera roll. Now I want to add another layer, but to do that I have to go back to the check mark, go back up here and click the Add Layer button. So now I've added a second layer, and you can see right now it's set to none, so we're not seeing anything but that first layer. You see this arrow up at the top? I'm going to tap on that, and look, here are our layers. Here's our first layer that we did, and here's the second layer. So you can continue to add multiple layers. So let's go ahead and add another layer here. I'm going to slide over. There's another one I like. It's called Lilac Rose. I'm going to tap on that. It's got that same dusty rose color. It's got cracks in it and everything. It makes it look old, but it's also way too much right now. So I'm going to dial it down considerably to a lesser powerful, more transparent layer. So now we're getting closer to what I want. So I can still have traces of the cracks. Now we're ready. We could save this again, but you see the little eyeball up here in the trash can? If we wanted to get rid of this layer altogether, we would just tap the trash can. But if we want to turn it off so we can see what it looks like without and come back to it, just tap the eyeball, and now it's turned off that second layer, and we can see what it looks like without. So this is great if you get 3 or 4 or 5 layers up here. You can turn them on and off and kind of to see maybe you like only 2 of them. And so if you save it while it's turned off, it will only save the ones that are turned on. So I'm going to go ahead. I like that pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and I might play with it a little more if I were, on my own here, not doing a webinar. But I'm going to stop there. I think it's pretty good. And I'm going to go down and hit the check mark, and I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go out and look at our camera roll here real quick. So let's go and look. Here's our camera roll, and there's the image that we've just saved with this beautiful vignette, and it's just kind of ethereal, and I think really cool. So now I want to put my watermark on it again. So to do that, I'm going to go back out to Image Blender, which is still here in the tray, tap on it. Oh, and there's the image that we just did before. Well, my signature is already there. So all I have to do is replace the picture on the left and see how that works, maybe readjust the signature. So I'm going to tap on the image on the left, remove it, tap again, go to the library, go to the camera roll, get the image, and voila. Now, if I want, I can go up to Arrange and tap on Arrange, and I can make that smaller by squeezing it in. I can move it over, reposition it wherever I want it. And when I'm done, I'm going to hit Save. And now I'm going to save the whole image. Now, here's the thing, too. Right now, we've got the signature in there, and we have the slider. If I take the slider all the way up, look how bright the signatures become, because now we're focused, we're primarily full force with the right image. But if I go to the left, I can fade it all the way out. So this is a great way of just having your signature, your watermark, be very, very subtle. You can adjust it to the intensity that you like. I usually like, particularly with an image like this that's already very ethereal, I want to keep my image of my signature very light. So when you're done, you tap the Save icon up here in the right and the Save icon down here. And there we go. Let's go out and take a look. So there is the second image, and there's our signature down there, very nicely placed and very nicely toned. And we've got this great image of our ballerina's feet. So some very cool stuff. Like I said before, we have too many people on the call for me to field questions individually, but if you have questions, please shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to get back with you as I can. As we close here, we've got just a few minutes left. I'd like to take a minute just to show you a little bit about some of the other things I have going on. For that, I'm going to share my entire screen, and there we go. And go out to my website, Here's my website. I was trying to take you out to a second ago. This is my workshops and tours pages. One of the things I do is lead tours all over the world. I'm about to head back to Cuba at the end of the month for my 7th trip. I take small groups to Cuba, no more than 8. We're full for January, but we have room in our November trip. If you have any interest, shoot me an email. Another one I wanted to let you know about is the Fonthill Castle Tour. This is a castle in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. It's just a fantastic place to shoot. The entire building is built with ceramic tile and formed concrete construction by Henry Mercer, a very eccentric character. And you can see from this picture each room, and there are, I can't tell you how many rooms. There are 27 levels in this place, and it is just an amazing opportunity to shoot. I have opportunities in May and in September. I'm going to Ireland in August, and I'll be shooting with Peter Cox, who's a native of Ireland from Cork County. It's the southwest corner of Ireland called the Dingle Peninsula. That will prove to be a wonderful opportunity, and these are all opportunities to learn to improve your photography, both big traditional camera photography as well as iPhone. Some of these trips, like the one with Peter and the ones in the Palouse here, I partner with other remarkable photographers. So in the spring, I'll be doing the Palouse with John Barclay. Many of you know John, wonderful big camera photographer. He knows his way around the iPhone too, but he's primarily shoots with Fuji today. And then in the fall, I'll be doing Harvest Palouse with my longtime partner, Sally Wolf, who's from Indianapolis here with me. We've been photographing together for a long time. And then in spring and fall, John Barclay and I are going to do a repeat of our fall Smokies workshop in November, and we'll be doing the springtime workshop as well as the fall workshop. So opportunities to photograph that part of the country at 2 different seasons, and it's just wonderful. John's been photographing there for more than 12 years, and he knows this area just very well, and we had a great time in November. Looking forward to going back. And then finally, many of you know Betty Wiley, who's a remarkable East Coast photographer. You see her images on covers of magazines out there all the time. Betty and I are partnering to do a workshop on the North Shore and one in Provincetown at the tip of the Cape in September. Those both are back-to-back. Remarkable opportunities for images as well as some classroom. Betty will be going over Photoshop and Lightroom, and I'll be dealing with iPhonography and processing. So those are some of the things that I have going on. I really encourage you to take a look at my website. I'd love it if you would sign up for my newsletter. I'll send you a link to some of those things in a follow-up email from today. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to shoot them off to me, and I will get you the link to this recording as soon as I get it processed and posted on the site. So thank you very much again for being part of the workshop today. Really have had a good time myself, and I hope to hear from all of you again, and maybe we'll get to go out and shoot sometime in the future. So thanks again. Happy New Year. Talk to you next time.